how inefficient that day becomes. You have to orient someone to doing this, not doing this. A supply teacher, as an example. Yes? At home. I have an infant at home. Fortunately, he's living at home with us, but if he has to go to daycare or to school and he's not well, we have to stop what we're doing, my wife and I, and we have to go get him. It's inefficient for the school, it's inefficient for the parents. It's quite costly on productivity, on peace. Yet if we observe where the majority of funding goes when it comes to healthcare, to medicine, it's on reactive medicine. It's on dealing with that sickness rather than inhibiting that sickness, correct? If we observe where the majority of our efforts are going, it's towards prosperity and not peace. Towards prosperity. Higher models of cars, higher amounts of square footage, and on and on and on, rather than to be peaceful, outside, inside. Our workshop beginning today, tomorrow, the day after, is a check on our lives. I've observed with my grandparents, I've met all of my grandparents, I still have a grandparent alive, that they went through a midlife crisis around the age of 45. I observed with my parents, it was around 40. I've observed with my generation, it's around 35. I went through my midlife crisis when I was 20. Now as we're saying this, some of us are thinking, oh, that's too bad, this crisis is becoming sooner. Conversely, that's a blessing. As we drove from Portland to Seattle, there was one point where we took a wrong turn. It was the driver's fault I was late, not mine. Now, the sooner we find out we're going the wrong way, the better, isn't it? You save time, you save effort. A crisis is a check on where are you going? What are you doing? Who are you becoming? What are you feeling? This is what our workshop is. It's like an annual checkup on our mental health. Socrates has a famous quote, "The life unexamined, fill in the blank, is the life not worth living." The life unexamined is the life not worth living. And when we read that, it's very pessimistic, no? Life sucks. But we have to look at it differently. If that's the case, the corollary is the life examined is the life worth living. If I examine, if I inquire, if I check, then life becomes worth living. Our workshop will be made up of 3 parts. Typically, when you come to such programs, when you come to a Jnana Yajna, who's speaking? Someone over here. Who's listening? Who's listening? Are you talking to us right now? We almost have become habituated to passive learning. And that's why in the work that I do, I've shifted my efforts from Jnana Yajnas to workshops. The first third of each workshop will be on philosophy. From me to you, that's the flow. The second will be practice. It's a workshop where you will practice. And the third part is a personalization, where whatever you practiced in this controlled environment, a way to practice it in the uncontrolled environment. Here, everyone likes you. You leave here, it's not the case, correct? So we need to know how to practice this in that environment, isn't it? So 3 parts. And I'll share a scriptural reference with all of you about this. In Bhagavata, there's a very selfish being called Dundukari. And he has a selfless brother called Gokarna. And Gokarna is trying to help Dundukari by remembering Bhagavan. So he narrates a Bhagavata Saptaha. And at this Saptaha, there's lots of other villagers there. And when this is completed, Dundukari becomes free. He's united with Bhagavan Vishnu. What happens to the rest of the villagers? Nothing. And they start to complain to Gokarna, hey, we're told that if you listen to Bhagavatam, that we'll be with Bhagavan Vishnu too. But here we are. And Gokarna said, the difference between Dundukari and you is Dundukari listened fully. And listening fully means reflected fully. Shravana was complete, so Manana is complete. But the villagers, while they were there, they were also not there. Thinking about home, thinking about tomorrow. That reflection wasn't there. So as we go through this workshop, remember, no reflection, no fruit. It's only with reflection that all we study about Vedanta, that our nature is happiness, becomes real. Today, we are going to focus on loneliness to aloneness. Loneliness to aloneness. Every workshop will have a different focus, all about happiness. This past week, say Monday to Sunday, by a show of hands, how many of you felt some sort of loneliness? It's so funny. We're looking around at each other's hands. That is your answer right there. I think we all feel a sense of loneliness. Now here's another question for you. When do you feel most lonely? We tend to feel most lonely early in the morning, before our day begins, and late at night, when you've changed your clothes, the lights are off, the person next to you is snoring. And then it's just you, with you, and there's a sense of emptiness, maybe. We all feel lonely. When you feel lonely, what do you do? What's your strategy for loneliness? Meditate.
Engage myself in something.
Doing something that's right. At UW is here?
Yes.
Okay. When college students feel lonely, what do? Eat something, party. Exactly. During exam time, everyone keeps gaining weight, right? Drinking soda, eating chips. Why? Because they don't want to study. We run away from that loneliness. Meditating is great, but usually we do something, eat something, drink something. We don't know what loneliness is, which is why we don't know how to deal with it. When you know what loneliness is, you deal with it. Loneliness is a sense of separation. So please be clear about that. Loneliness is a sense of separation. And why I'm using the word sense, you can be with a whole lot of people and still feel lonely, correct? And you can be with nobody and feel lonely. It's not physical. It's a sense, which means it's your own interpretation. It is subjective. I'll give you my own personal example. In May of 2009, I went to the Hari Om Ashram in Surat. And for an entire week, I was in a room by myself with no windows, locked from the outside. This is not jail. I chose to be in there. And it was epic. I feel like if they never opened that door, I would be fine with that. There was no natural light in that room, but there was no loneliness. And again, sometimes I'm with so many people and there's that incompleteness. We call this in Vedanta Satta adhyasa. Satta adhyasa means you project separation. You project it. When it's actually not there, you project it. We do that a lot when we walk into a room, we think everyone's looking at us. Everyone's judging us. When in actuality, nobody is. They're so lost in their own minds, nobody's judging you. That's one of my public speaking tips is, everyone keeps thinking about what they would say in that position, nobody is listening to you. That's why I'm so good. I don't think anyone's listening to me. Satta adhyasa. Thinking about this more from a philosophical perspective. Anything that makes you stronger is natural. Anything that makes you weaker is unnatural. When we feel this sense of separation, we do not feel stronger, we feel weaker. Which means that that separation is not natural. So the opposite must be true, which is togetherness, or in Advaita we call it oneness. In oneness, we do feel stronger. Physically we feel stronger when my hands are together. When people are working together towards the same purpose, towards the same cause, then the best in them comes out. So Dvaita, or separation, is not natural. Advaita, or oneness, is natural. This sense of separation, in the language of Acharya Shankara, is Maya. Maya is simply Rupa and Nama. Rupa means forms. Nama means names. Lake Washington is here. Is that what it's called? When you see Lake Washington, I think the first thing we see, especially on a sunny day, is the waves. There's so many waves, and you can even name them. Wave 1, wave 2, wave 3. We see their forms. When in actuality, there's not wave 1, wave 2, there's just Lake Washington. Correct? There's only one form and one name. But now you reference Lake Washington in the Pacific Ocean. In actuality, there's only water. Being lost in all of these forms and names is simply more separation, more projection. That's all unnatural. It all makes us weaker. Think about that. We'll shift to a more practical analysis. Humans are social beings. That's why social media is so powerful. If we weren't social beings, social media would be futile. It would be dead, but it keeps growing. We are social beings. As we socialize, there are two wants. There are two factors that make us feel connected. The first is depth. Depth. When we connect with people or want to connect with people, it happens through depth, not otherwise. And the second is authenticity. Authenticity. This is what makes us feel connected. Depth and authenticity. So now let's think about what's happening. Are our relationships, the people you work with, the people you meet in stores, is there depth there? When someone says, "How are you?" what do you say? Good. Good, how are you? Do you actually mean that? Are you actually good? Are you concerned about how someone is? It's just a reaction. Sometimes I tell people, "Hari Om," and they'll say, "I'm good, how are you?" You see, again, the adhyasa, the projection is they think I'm asking how they are, and I do care, but that's not what I asked. It's not deep, it's quite casual. And then authenticity. I had heard one speaker say, I am not who I think I am. I am not who you think I am. I am what I think you're thinking about me. How can there be authenticity then, right? And it's like our system drives that. I've been speaking at a lot of corporations and hospitals and so on, so they require me to prepare my resume. And as I'm preparing this, I feel so artificial writing about this is where I travel and this is how many students I teach and so on. And I'm fortunate that this resume is just a triviality. It's just they need to have that on their record. But for another person preparing their resume, is that really your skill set? Do you know all of those things? Do you manage all of those people? See, it just grows from there. It just keeps growing and growing and growing. If you're married, don't do this. But if you go to shadi.com, everyone's tall. Everyone has weedish complexion. Where's the authenticity? So we remain not connected, but isolated. Despite seeing more people than ever on a screen or around us, we feel more isolated than ever. And as I go on with my workshop, I'll share with some of you in different ways. Every 12 minutes, an American commits suicide. That's only in America. Every 12 minutes. I got here at 3:15, let's say. I'll leave here at 6:15. A dozen people would have committed suicide in the time that I'm here. We're here together. Because to them, there's less of a reason to live than to live. There's no one there to live for. That isolation. Today, right now, I don't think that at all. I have a wife that I love. I have a son that I love all of you. There's no isolation. Again, I'm referencing psychology with Vedanta. We all know that a superiority complex is ego, but so is an inferiority complex. Someone who's superior is self-absorbed. Someone who's inferior, feels inferior, is self-absorbed too. There is no depth in them or authenticity within themselves, so they definitely can't share. So what are we supposed to do? Fine, if this is who I am, this is my diagnosis, what do I do? Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to share with you a 4-point plan. First practically, then philosophically, to be practiced serially. Step 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, okay? And I promise you, every one of you can do this. Can do this. Whether you will or not is different. I was in one satsang and I was talking about inspiration. And at the end I said, we can. And everyone said, we can. I said, we must. Everyone said, we must. I said, we will. And someone in the front goes, we wish. Okay, number 1. Associate with quality friends. Associate with quality friends is the first way to go from loneliness to aloneness. Quality friends. If all of those kids walked into the room right now and you had the assignment to teach them what a friend is, what would be the primary characteristic of a friend?
Trustworthy.
Trustworthy, good.
Dependable.
Dependable, that's very good.
Authentic.
Authentic, now you're just using my answers, yes.
Listener.
Someone who listens, sure, so like a therapist, counselor. You're all right, obviously you're not wrong. In Ramayana, each kanda has a different dharma about relationships. As an example, the 4th kanda is about mitra dharma. It's where we learn about who a friend is. And Bhagwan Rama is teaching Sugriva. And he says to Sugriva that the primary characteristic of a friend is one who challenges you. One who's encouraging you to be better, to not be complacent. And Sugriva is listening carefully. And after this dialogue is done, Sugriva tells Bhagwan Rama, you know who my best friend is? Who does he say?
Rama.
Not Rama, he says Vali. Vali is my best friend. The same brother that's trying to assassinate him is his best friend because Vali brought Bhagwan Rama to him. Correct? Nobody challenged Sugriva like Vali. And the best in him is brought up, he finds Bhagwan Rama. The people that you invest your time with, are they challenging you to be the best you are? Only you can decide that. Who am I to say? But for us to reflect on it. Number 2. This is to be practiced second. Focus on quality work. Focus on quality work. If you like what you do, and people don't like you, will it matter? You like what you do. It doesn't matter if people like you or not. But if you don't like what you do, professionally, service-wise, whatever you're doing, you don't like what you do. So what are we constantly doing then? Looking around at public opinion, public validation. Naturally, I'm going to feel lonely. Where is the grass the greenest? Where you water it. If I keep looking at your life, your grass is so green and I'm so lonely. But if I'm so focused, quality work, on my quality work, my grass is the greenest. I'm not looking at your house, your spouse, and so on. Swami Tejamananda says it like this: do what you value and value what you do. Do what you value what you do. There's a lot of younger people here whose professions, as an example, are not fixed. The ideal life is to take up a profession that you like to do, that you love to do. I was in Portland, I was telling you, and I was teaching some high schoolers, and I asked them, you're going to love this. I was teaching them Ramayana in a different way, and I said, what is the greatest papa and the greatest punya? And so I was clear, I said, what is the greatest demerit and what is the greatest merit? And what these high schoolers said, the greatest demerit is losing marks on a test. The greatest merit is a scholarship. They were so oriented towards academics only. There was no sense of papa or punya in the sense of being away from the Spirit or close to the Spirit. And I laughed but felt sad too. That their focus is this. When life is this. We should be doing what we like to do, doing what we value. No. I went to business school. I was engaged in commercial real estate. Then that crisis hit, 20 years old or so. And I went to an ashram. No passport, no cell phone, nothing. No friends. But then I found what I valued, and that's what I do now. I do what I value. I'm trying to make this personal. Number 3. Invest in quality thoughts. Invest in quality thoughts. Quantity thoughts tend to become those thoughts like, I can't, I'm not good enough. Others can do it, but I can't. The quality thoughts are, I can, I am good enough, I have these potentials, these potentialities. How many thoughts a day do we all have? Give me an actual number. You didn't count yesterday. 60,000 thoughts a day, generally. 60,000 thoughts. Some of these thoughts are fear thoughts, some of them are courage thoughts. Which ones do we focus on more? We tend to focus on the fear thoughts, and the more you focus on a thought, what happens? It keeps capturing the rest of the thoughts too, like a cancer. Our default is those negative thoughts. I can't. I'm not good enough. Focusing on quality thoughts is to shift that default to, I'm not born to be normal, to be ordinary. I'm born to be weird. I'm not born to be ordinary. There's a lovely quote by Oscar Wilde. I posted this recently that said, don't love anyone who thinks you're ordinary. That's like this. If I'm around people who think I'm ordinary, I'll feel like I'm ordinary. But if I'm around people who believe in me, people who love me, I will start to believe and love myself also. But it has to happen here, in our own thoughts. The way Swami Chinmaya says this, if you don't enjoy your own company, why do you inflict it upon others? But if you enjoy your own company, then you become the most personable person. Everyone wants to be around you. You become charismatic. Invest in quality thoughts. Okay, looking at me, not your notes. What's our first practice? I love it. You know, it's like when you tell people not to text and drive. That's what you don't look at your notes. Okay. The first is associate with quality friends. Satsanga. After that, focus on quality work. You can't be around quality people all the time, but the work is more in your control, correct? Then, number 3, invest in quality thoughts. Maybe the work can't be noble all the time, but certainly more in control is just you and your mind. That's all very practical. Now I'll shift to the philosophical strategy. Read about aloneness. Read about aloneness. Within that word aloneness, what word is there? Oneness, I think. Is that word oneness? You know, when I say oneness, we all think Bob Marley, we're all one, peace sign. But reading about oneness is reading about Advaita, the logic of there's waves and there's the ocean, but there's actually just water. You have family, class, genus, species, all of that stuff, but when you move this way, it goes into one kingdom, I think. One domain, I think. You get my point. Read about aloneness. There's a lovely Buddhist quote that I reflect on often. When you walk, walk. When you eat, eat. We're so used to multitasking that a statement like that becomes quite, maybe that's reality. No? So I'll give you some insights into this aloneness. The number 1 and the number infinity are equal. In oneness, there is no other. In infinity, there is no other. They are the same, philosophically. In one, there's no other. In infinity, there's no other. If I tune into aloneness, which is that oneness, I start to feel infinite. Madhava Seva is Manava Seva. best way to serve the Creator is serve creation. But I have to read about that. What was significant about March 8th? International Davies Day. Women is just a description of a body. I feel Davy is a much better word. It's one's nature. I read a quote on that day that said, when a woman knows what she brings to the table, she's not afraid to eat alone. When a woman knows what she brings to the table, she is not afraid to eat alone. Generalizing that, when we know our nature is oneness, we are not afraid to be alone. It's most natural. Right now, we're living in a period called Kali, a dark age. What are some words to describe Kali? In English, what are some words to describe Kali? No one. Materialistic, sure, good. Selfish, I mentioned that. Another?
Dishonest.
Okay. Fast. Kali also means speed. Fast. We live in a period where all is moving faster than ever. Remember telephone, internet? Now 5G networks are being built, I think. Correct? Microwaves. Now we have those ovens, those conductor ovens, whatever those are called. Everything is so fast now. But as everything moves very fast, it can be quite overwhelming. We tend to be afraid of all of this change. Many of the articles, the research I did for this workshop shows how many lines of code does Google encompass? 2 billion. How many neurons does a typical human brain? Some 100, some 80 billion. So even if we go 90 billion, every one of us is 50 times. We have 50 times the potential of Google. Now in Guru Purnima, people offer worship to Google. Nobody asks more questions to anyone than Google, right? Nobody gives more answers faster than Google. But we have 50 times that potential. These neurons are neural networks. When I'm afraid, I rewire these neurons to go in a certain way. Loneliness does the same thing. That's what I want to point out. Every time I'm afraid, my brain is wired in that way. When I'm lonely, it's the same change in my brain structure. So being lonely is a serious matter. If your kids are growing up afraid, you're concerned for them, correct? Being lonely is the same way. Remember, our society is made up of individuals. If a individual can address these neural networks that I'm going to change, instead of face everything and run, to face everything and rise. That was our workshop last. Yes? You all know me, right? We met last year. Instead of face everything and run, face everything and rise. If I can change that, I change my own brain. Individuals create culture, isn't it? This church has no culture. It's the people in the church that create the culture. Seattle intrinsically has no culture. It's the people of Seattle that create culture. Individuals create families, and families create societies. Societies create humanity. We keep saying we're living in this period of materialism and selfishness. The macro is only like that because the micro is like that. And if you want the macro to be different, you do have the power by making the micro different. After our philosophy is practice. Okay. What I'm going to ask you to do eventually is I want you to lie down on your back with your head towards the altar. Just wait. You can't be touching anything, paper, purse, etc., and definitely not anyone. Please lie down on your back, spread out, and just let go.